In a brazen act of aggression, Iran unleashed a barrage of over 180 missiles on Israeli soil. The attack, launched in the early hours of the morning, sent shockwaves through the region and beyond. It marked a significant escalation in the ongoing shadow war between the two arch-enemies. While Israel's Iron Dome defense system managed to intercept a majority of the projectiles, the sheer scale of the assault was unprecedented. This latest confrontation has plunged the Middle East into a renewed state of crisis. The international community watched with bated breath, fearing a wider conflagration. The spectre of a full-blown war loomed large, threatening to engulf the entire region in chaos. The missile attack was not an isolated incident. It came as a direct response to recent Israeli airstrikes targeting Iranian-backed Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. Hezbollah, a powerful Shiite militia and political party, has long been a thorn in Israel's side. Iran, for its part, views Israel as an illegitimate state and a threat to its regional ambitions. Israel's renowned Iron Dome missile defense system swung into action, intercepting the vast majority of the incoming projectiles. The system, lauded for its effectiveness in previous conflicts, once again proved its mettle. It successfully neutralized a significant portion of the threat, minimizing casualties and damage. However, despite the Iron Dome's impressive performance, some missiles did manage to penetrate the defenses. Several explosions rocked central and southern Israel, causing damage to buildings and infrastructure. Thankfully, the early warning systems and bomb shelters limited the number of casualties. The limited number of casualties did little to alleviate the sense of fear and anxiety gripping the Israeli population. The attack served as a stark reminder of the ever-present threat posed by Iran and its proxies. It also highlighted the vulnerability of civilian populations caught in the crosshairs of this bitter conflict. In the aftermath of the attack, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation, his voice laced with anger and resolve. He condemned the Iranian aggression in the strongest possible terms, labeling it a grave act of war. Netanyahu vowed a swift and forceful response, declaring that Israel would not hesitate to defend itself.
Iran has made a grave mistake, Netanyahu declared. We will not tolerate attacks on our sovereignty or our citizens. Israel will respond with full force to this act of aggression.
His words echoed the sentiment of a nation on edge, determined to protect itself from what it perceived as an existential threat. True to his word, Netanyahu wasted no time in authorizing retaliatory strikes. Israeli warplanes roared into action, targeting Hezbollah military installations and weapons depots in Lebanon. The strikes were carefully calibrated to degrade Hezbollah's military capabilities while minimizing civilian casualties. The Biden administration wasted no time in voicing its unwavering support for Israel's right to defend itself. President Joe Biden, in a phone call with Netanyahu, condemned the Iranian attack and reiterated the United States' ironclad commitment to Israel's security.
The United States condemns in the strongest possible terms the recent rocket attacks from Gaza and Lebanon on Israel, said White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. We stand with Israel and its right to defend itself and its people.
The statement underscored the enduring strength of the US-Israeli alliance. The Biden administration's unwavering support for Israel signaled to Iran that it could not act with impunity. It also served as a deterrent, preventing the conflict from spiraling out of control. The United States, while advocating for restraint, made it clear that it would stand by its ally in the face of aggression. A legacy of conflict, the Iranian-Israeli shadow war. The recent missile attack is just the latest chapter in a long and bitter shadow war between Iran and Israel. The two countries have been locked in a state of perpetual hostility since the 1979 Islamic Revolution in Iran. The revolution brought to power a vehemently anti-Israel regime that viewed the Jewish state as an illegitimate entity. Over the decades, the conflict has played out on multiple fronts, from proxy wars in Lebanon and Syria to covert operations and cyber attacks. Iran has provided extensive military and financial support to Hezbollah, which it views as a valuable tool in its fight against Israel. Israel, for its part, has conducted numerous airstrikes against Iranian targets in Syria, aiming to prevent the transfer of advanced weapons to Hezbollah. The rivalry between Iran and Israel is fueled by a complex web of factors, including ideological differences, geopolitical ambitions, and historical grievances. Iran sees itself as the leader of the Islamic world and a champion of the Palestinian cause. Israel, meanwhile, views Iran as an existential threat determined to wipe it off the map. The world reacts, condemnation, and calls for calm. The international community reacted with alarm to the escalation of violence between Iran and Israel. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency meeting to address the crisis, with member states expressing deep concern over the situation.
I call for maximum restraint from all parties, urging them to refrain from any action that could further escalate tensions.
The European Union echoed these sentiments, urging a de-escalation of the conflict and a return to dialogue. Despite the widespread condemnation of Iran's actions, there was no consensus on how to address the underlying issues driving the conflict. Some countries, including the United States, called for tougher sanctions on Iran, while others advocated for a diplomatic solution. The nuclear threat, a geopolitical time bomb. Looming large over the conflict is the issue of Iran's nuclear program. Israel views a nuclear-armed Iran as an existential threat and has repeatedly threatened to take military action to prevent it from acquiring such a capability. The 2015 nuclear deal, which placed limits on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief, offered a glimmer of hope. However, the Trump administration's withdrawal from the agreement in 2018 and the subsequent reimposition of sanctions have brought relations between the two countries to a new low. Iran has since resumed enriching uranium to higher levels, bringing it closer to the threshold of weapons-grade material. While Iran maintains that its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes, Israel and its allies remain deeply skeptical. The unresolved nuclear issue continues to be a major source of tension in the region. The Middle East braces, regional stability at risk. The escalating conflict between Iran and Israel has sent shockwaves through the already volatile Middle East. The region, already grappling with multiple crises, including the Syrian civil war and the ongoing conflict in Yemen, now faces the spectre of a wider conflagration. The interconnected nature of regional alliances means that any escalation between Iran and Israel has the potential to draw in other actors. Hezbollah, with its vast arsenal of rockets and missiles, poses a significant threat to Israel. Iran, meanwhile, could leverage its proxies in Iraq and Syria to open up new fronts against Israel. The potential for miscalculation and unintended escalation is high. A minor incident could quickly spiral out of control, leading to a regional war with catastrophic consequences. The international community must work together to prevent such a scenario from unfolding. The human cost civilians caught in the crossfire. As with all conflicts, it is the innocent civilians who bear the brunt of the violence. The recent missile attack on Israel caused widespread fear and panic, forcing people to seek refuge in bomb shelters. The psychological toll of living under the constant threat of attack is immeasurable. In Lebanon, too, civilians are paying a heavy price for the actions of Hezbollah. Israeli airstrikes, while targeting military installations, have caused civilian casualties and damage to infrastructure. The cycle of violence only deepens the suffering of ordinary people on both sides. The international community must prioritize the protection of civilians caught in the crossfire. Humanitarian aid organizations must be granted unhindered access to provide assistance to those in need.
The recent missile attacks have been terrifying. We live in constant fear, not knowing when the next strike will come. Our children are traumatized. We need peace, not more violence.
A plea for peace, the urgent need for dialogue. The recent escalation of violence between Iran and Israel underscores the urgent need for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. While the path to peace is fraught with obstacles, the alternative is too horrific to contemplate. Dialogue, however difficult, remains the only viable option. The international community must work tirelessly to bring both sides to the negotiating table. Confidence-building measures, such as prisoner exchanges and the easing of sanctions, could help to create a more conducive environment for talks. The stakes are too high to allow this conflict to fester. The future of the Middle East, and indeed the world, may depend on the ability of Iran and Israel to find a peaceful path forward.